Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce, and today we're doing another Women of Horror Spotlight. Today, I have with us. She's an author, and she's all the way coming from the UK, by the way. And she has a book that's on pre-sale right now. It's going to be releasing in August, and it's called The Barricade. I have with us Stephanie Ellis. Stephanie, welcome to the Horror Room.
Hello, thank you for having me. And if anyone's curious as to where I am, I'm actually in Wrexham in North Wales. I think some people might be learning a bit about it via a certain Disney program called Welcome to Wrexham, because it's about the football team that's here. So you've got, it was Rob and Ryan, McElhenney, and they're just round the back. So yeah, the football. And I blanked on their names.
Yes. Well, I don't know if you watch my show, but I have a lot of fans from the UK, and I speak to a lot of horror creators from the UK as well.
Yeah, well, it's Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney who are the owners of our little football team here. But
nice!
I can't believe that I actually blanked them, but there you go. Blame the age.
Listen, it's all good. But listen, tell us a little bit about The Barricade.
It's slightly different to what I've been writing recently. It's a post-apocalyptic sci-fi horror, and when someone introduced that at a recent panel, they said, Steph, why don't you just call it apocalyptic? But I like to have all those little labels in there so it can sit in different genres. I do write in this genre, but not as a novel as yet. So this one is a slight change to the folk horror that I do. And The Barricade is an idea that I've had for a while, because you often hear of end of the world scenarios. And in those instances, the great and the supposedly good, the wealthy, they either get a spaceship and fly off, or they get these wonderful bunkers and live under the ground, and then they come back up when everything's hunky-dory, but they're all looked after. But I thought, what if the computers say that the Earth is doomed, and these people, they build this bunker and they go underground, and then they leave the majority of humanity above. They've got to, just to get on as they can. But then instead of the planet actually coming to an end, it rights itself. So I think it's sort of 10, 20 years down the line, those below actually want to come out. But there is a rule for those who went below, because everyone who was left behind feels very resentful, and they wanted to express their resentment. So when the bunker was built, around the entrance to that bunker, they built a barricade. And over the years, people would put their rubbish on there, any old furniture, any bits of old buildings. They would even go up there to die, and because there were cameras on the barricade below, so they would show people below what they had done to those above and then what contempt they were held in. And there was an unwritten rule, and I'm going to read it here because I always get it wrong. They chose to go in, they can never come out. So that is the rule that you can't break. But then those people do want to come out, and they appear within the barricade, and they want to come out and carry on as normal. So if you had your prime ministers and your royalty below, they would expect that when they came back, but that is not going to happen. So the book is very much about these two sides of society, the haves and the have-nots, and that switches around a bit because the haves went underground and left the have-nots above. But now the have-nots are the haves because they're in possession of the world as it's sorting itself out. And the ones underground are the have-nots. But there are other elements. There are things that are going on within the barricade that aren't quite clear. There are unexplained deaths, and there's bits of experimentation that's discovered. And it's very much, as well as haves and have-nots, it's about manipulation, how people are manipulated to do things. The main character in this, she's a scientist, but her husband went underground, and he took their son and his secretary and left her and the daughter behind, and he allowed the son to decide whether his sister came or not. And he said no, because he's been a Bolshevik teen at the time. So the mother and daughter are left behind, and then, I say, the father, the secretary, and everything went down. But it's also a bit, we always think we're going to behave a certain way in a disaster scenario. You want to be one of the good guys, and all these people are saying, oh, they left us behind, I wouldn't do that. But then you think, well, wouldn't you? You do what you have to survive, because so many people say that they'll behave one way. Faced with the reality, would they? So there is a bit of that as well. It's sort of challenging how we look at ourselves and how we look at each other. Can you condemn people for wanting to survive? Yes, you can condemn your husband for taking his mistress.
Yeah.
But there are also mothers who left their children. There's wives who left their husbands, grandparents. It just split families apart, and that happens so often in history. But again, it happened within this little area of the barricade.
And this is a deep topic. I mean, because it talks about the construction. I mean, the social the social poverty. Now, what gave you the idea for this story?
Well, it's just comfort viewing for me. It's a bit strange. Are end of the world scenarios, the day after tomorrow, things where humanity's doomed. And I think zombie films as well a little bit. And I was thinking the other day why I like those. And it's because, yes, you're trying to survive, but you don't have to go and do your job each day and you're off the treadmill. So it's a release from the treadmill. But I do like those sort of doomsday scenarios. And it's just, but what happens if it doesn't happen? Everybody always says, if this happens, we'll do this, 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 and that's it. And you expect everything to happen as the computers or as the scientists tell you. But what if it doesn't? So it was very much a what if idea. And I sort of played with it. And I had the female character. She's an older woman, so she's going through the menopause as well. So she's struggling her own biological changes. And I'm going to say now, anyone who mocks a menopausal woman, no, don't. It can. Most people float through it, but it can be really dire at times. And she goes through things that I had a little experience of as well. People have always laughed at a woman's hot flushes. When you are boiling up and it is sudden, you just want to explode. So how can you actually concentrate on what's happening around you? There might be somebody charging at you with a gun or something happening, but then this heat overtakes you and you just want to So, there's all those little aspects in there as well, but she does manage it. She doesn't destroy herself, hopefully. I'd say the ending is a hopeful ending, I think, maybe for me. I'm not going to give any spoilers. But it does chop and changes to direction because there are elements in there that are not hinted at in the blurb. And I'm not really going to talk about here because it adds a little layer to those who like sort of sci-fi elements in that. But, excuse me, I also like to blend scientific advances as well into stories if I can and see what we actually end up with. I think we go so far that you don't really see what could happen afterwards. Everything's supposed to be for the good of mankind, but then you can see how that might actually not be the case. I had something I discovered in another book when I was doing a bit of research. You can have these little caps that people wear and it can sort of read your thoughts. Thoughts can be seen clearer now. And you think that'd be great for someone who's suffering an illness where they can't communicate. But then you can imagine interrogators and police and all those elements. They will come in and they will take science that's supposed to help people and manipulate it. And there is that aspect to it as well. So that's partly why I went off on that tangent.
No, but listen, one thing you say is true. I know here in the States for the last couple of months, it's been people, everyone was talking about the end of the world. It was like just in biblical times, this is when it's supposed to end, and nothing happened. So, but everybody says they know when the end of the world is going to be, and I agree with you. In your book, I think when it happens, it's going to be, oh shit, it's just not going to. No one's going to know. It's just going to be no planning. It's just going to be done. And but the thing is too, I agree with you. You don't know what you're going to do in order to survive. I like watching, things like The Walking Dead, and, you would see wives leave their husband to go with a man who had more, or, he had a house, food, and it's nothing personal. It's that survival element added in.
Yeah. I was watching there's a Netflix series recently, Three Body Problem.
Yes.
And I watched it and I really enjoyed it. And when yeah, spoiler to people, but when the brain was launched into space, and I felt so bad for him just to be this brain floating around. I actually found out, I think another horror writer, he said, oh, it's actually a book, or it's a trilogy of books. So I've got them all. I'm on the last one,
Oh,
Death's End. These are the others. So this is my past few weeks reading.
nice,
So I've got
nice.
all, and it is completely different. It's got the same elements, but it's very much more sciencey, obviously, and so it does take a lot of thought. But again, it's about what humanity does when faced with the end. And so you've got this alien invasion that they got rid of the initial aliens, but they flagged up to the rest of the universe that, hey, here's the Earth, you can come and annihilate us. So they're building some of these new spaceships. And again, it's the wealthy who are able to do this and everyone else can't. And it's become one of the biggest inequalities ever experienced because the majority of the planet will die, possibly. I don't know. It's called Death's End, so it might be hope for it yet. But
Yes.
it's just this whole idea, this whole concept of inequality. People think, oh, yeah, they're going to choose the best people. They're going to choose the skilled, the talented. But then it doesn't end up like that. You get your millionaires, your billionaires, and everyone else just has to make do.
I don't know if you ever seen the movie The Purge or the movie series
Yes.
The Purge.
Yes,
But
my eldest daughter loves those, and she got me to watch them all. So I think we've watched them all, and so it's that sort of one night of madness, isn't it? And then there is that
yeah.
one where it becomes a continual purge as well. It doesn't stop,
Mm-hmm.
and I just can't. When I watch those, I can't understand how some people would just go out and kill. I know they said it was to vent, but to take someone's life for no reason and then the next day just carry on as normal, I don't know.
I've had the privilege of being I've lived and been to quite a few countries in the world, and we're the laws are different there than they are here.
Mm.
I've always said to people who are here in the States, I would say that the reason why majority of the people follow the rules or the laws here because if not they will be punished. But if those laws were not being put in place, I think you would see a lot more killings. You would see a lot more rapings. You would see a lot more bad things happening. But the only reason why us as humans we don't do it is because if there's laws or rules put in place, we're like, I don't want to do that because XYZ is going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think we're as civilized as we make
No.
out. You only have to look at the wars going on and the conflicts in various parts of the world to see that as soon as normality is stripped away, all those things you mentioned, and I would say especially with regard to what women suffer, that all comes back. Rape against women during war is a war crime and it's expressed as such, but it continues to happen. So in all those circumstances, it's like, yeah, women these days were equal, we've got all these rights, but you strip that away, no, we're regarded as a possession to be, attacked and destroyed or killed or whatever. I honestly think that we're sort of just so close to going back. It can be quite frightening.
I spent
Hopeful.
but I spent a lot of time in African countries, and by being an African American myself, I hear a lot of African Americans, who have never experienced African countries, and they say, "Oh my goodness, I want to go there and live there and so forth." But like, what they realize is what a lot of African American women don't realize is that most women in those countries, especially Black women, have absolutely no rights at all. Like there is no laws against rape. There's no laws against domestic violence. When it comes to a divorce, the man has to approve the divorce. And I mean, even if a woman decides to cheat out of her marriage or do anything like that, that's a death sentence.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as child support. A man can have a child with a woman and just run, and he's not financially obligated to take care of that child. there's so many things, and I mean, you look at South America, there's those same elements. So like it's crazy, but like but if you look, majority of the world is not that civilized.
Mm.
The way
We're
that
in a bubble.
that we think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you can imagine if you toss in a end of the world scenario in it, it would be all hell.
Yeah, and I try to be hopeful. I think when you look at past history, you have the rise of your dictators, and then eventually they are overthrown. But when everything becomes in a state of flux, then people tend to follow the strongest characters because they think that they will create rules and a feeling of security. So there will be somebody else creating their own rules. So I think there would probably be anarchy for a while until a strong figurehead came through, and then people would follow them, whether they're a dictator or otherwise. I mean, you look at Russia and they've had Putin. He's just been re-elected for I don't know how many years he's been there now, and they showed him on TV last night like an old Tsar, strolling up the red carpet, and we see him as a tyrant, and then his own people don't see him that way. So it's all these different perspectives. I'm not sure that anyone ever sees the right side of things, and again, that's explored a bit in the Barricade.
Now, your personal opinion, Stephanie, if you were in this book or in this scenario and you were outside of the barricade, would you want the people from the barricade to come up and get to live their normal lives like they were before everything happened?
No. I honestly, I would be like most people, and I'd want them to have a certain degree of comeuppance. I mean, if everybody voted to say, yes, they can all come back up, I would not want them to have those positions of power. They would have to re-earn their place and show that they are ready to contribute, whether it's hard physical labor, helping till the fields or what have you, rather than just assuming that they can come back and say, look, I was your prime minister before, you should do what I say now. I think there has to be some sort of rebalancing, and also things put in place that such a thing should never happen again. But whenever, the one phrase I hate these days is the one, lessons learned. People will say, oh, we're going to learn the lessons, or lessons will be learned from this. And it's trotted out every time, and lessons are never learned because people don't really dig into whatever event happened. They think, oh, it's done, it's not going to happen again, and then it's just swept aside. We'll learn our lessons, sweep it aside, and just carry on.
Yeah. And that's not the way to handle anything in life.
No. I wish people would talk a lot more, shout a lot less, turn away from social media a bit. That is very much, oh, you must agree with me, or you're this, that, or the other. There's no middle ground. There's no listening. There's no compassion or understanding of nuance. When you reading is subjective. But when people write their posts on social media, they don't seem to see that people can read that different ways. And so they think that their interpretation of it is the right one. And if you come up and say, well, actually, this person didn't really mean that, I'll be, no. They said this, therefore, if you don't agree with me, you're that. And I think that's skewed so much of natural sort of relationships between people. It's not social, really. We have to be on there as writers. You have to be there to engage and to communicate. But I think that the kindness has gone out of society quite a lot there. But again, there's also this element of, over here, you see the politicians and various people reacting to what's said on social media, but they forget that whether it's Twitter, which I left a little while ago now, that is only a small proportion of the population, really. There's a whole load of people out there who don't agree with what's on Twitter, but they're not on there, so they're not going to say anything. But then you get people reacting in places of responsibility, in those positions. Oh, we'll do this because that's what people say, or we need to show that we're this kind. And it's just given too much power to platforms which don't really have the reach they think it does at times as well. We're having our lives directed by platforms which are now even more under attack because of AI. When I was growing up, we were always told, a photograph is a genuine thing. You can't really manipulate it. What you see is the real thing. What you hear is the real thing. Yes, you got your films and things, but it was still very basic. And now you've got a whole world of deep fakes and all sorts. So what you see posted is not necessarily genuine, whether it's written, whether it's visual, or even video. Personally, I don't really trust anything that I see anymore online. I'll try and do one of those fact checker things, because when you hear a story and people say, "Oh, this has happened," and I'll trot off to a certain site and have a look, and it'll be, "Oh no, it's this actually." Yeah, okay. But then it's this whole idea that people can take your identity, your image, and put you in another position, and it's not you. And then no matter how much you try and how much you deny it, others, "Oh no, you're just pretending." It's just, I don't know how we're going to progress from where we are at the moment.
but I totally agree with you when it comes to two things. When it comes to social media, it's kind of scary because I saw something completely ridiculous today. It was saying that Beyonce, who's an American singer, offered Kid Rock, who's a country singer, American, $100 million to perform with her on stage, and he said no. By the way, that's a fake. There's no way. Listen, you offer anybody $100 million to perform on the stage for entertaining, they're going to do it. And I'm just looking at. I'm like, nobody. There can't be no one who believes that. And I'm going through the comments, and it was just, "Yeah, go ahead, Kid Rock." I'm like, whoa! Like, people literally, like, I do not believe anything I see on social media until I do a fact check. Even then, I'm still kind of worried. But, like, it's crazy that a lot of people, that's how they get their news. That's how they get their wisdom. That's how they get their advice, is through social media. And social media, I would say probably 70% of what's on social media is false. It's false information, or it's interpreted for to someone else's opinion. But the other thing I want to bring up too is, everybody relies on text messages and messaging services to communicate, and you can easily misinterpret that as well.
Yeah, it's such a short form to try and convey quite deep thoughts at time. And the other aspect of it, it also stirs up anger. I think people are a lot more angry these days. We're being whipped up by these algorithms that seem to feed off people's fury, and it's like the algorithms are the sharks sort of circling people's comments and then picking them up and feeding them on, so it becomes a frenzy. So it's just dire. I do have a phone, a smartphone.
I do too.
I fought against it for years and years and years. And my kids had phones before I did. My husband's got a phone. But when I was at work and they were at school, it's, "Mum, you've got to get a phone." And I said, "I don't want one. I don't want to be contacted all the time. If anyone needs me, there's phones you can ring up the normal way." So I got a phone in the end because they kept pushing, because they said, "Oh, you can turn it off, don't have it on all the time." So I buy it, and now they just say, "You've got your phone off. It should be on. You should be there all the time." I don't like that. I used to just pick up a phone and talk to people. But that's the other thing I see. People have their phones, but they don't necessarily use them to talk to each other. Again, it's back to the texting. If someone rings you, it's avoided. It's just something that the younger generation don't do. It's just...
And I'm 41, and even in my generation, people don't like talking on the phone. And it irks me because, like, I'll text if it's something quick, but I'm not going to sit here and have an hour-long back-and-forth conversation with somebody through text, where we can just call me and we can just knock this out in 10 minutes, like, but it's just weird. It's just we're in a culture now that everything, but also what I would say about social media too is it has also turned people. Everybody's consumed with themselves. It's constant. Look at me. 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 And people don't care about anything else. They don't care nobody about anything else. It's this constant self validation. How many likes did I get? How many views did I get? And it's kind of like it's turned us into robots.
Yeah, I think we've become very, as you say, very self-centered, very selfish, and quite egotistical. And there are brilliant people out there. There are ordinary people out there. There are middling people out there. But everybody believes they have to be the one that's special. We're all special to different people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if they accept that, then you don't need to be special on a computer to hundreds of people you're probably never even going to meet.
Yeah.
So you just have to try and accept yourself as they are. I think one of the saddest things I heard was I used to work in a secondary school, which over here is for 11 to 16-year-olds. I was a teaching assistant and a literacy specialist and a librarian. And I worked with very challenging teens. And I'd go into the classrooms with some of them who would have difficulties accessing the lesson. But there was one English lesson, and they were talking about photoshopping images. And the teacher was saying, wouldn't you want to be seen as you are? You know, get rid of all that so you don't get this pressure on yourself to look a certain way. And the kids, this group was about 13 years old, 13, 14. They said no. They wanted to keep it, and they wanted to change themselves to look like their photoshopped image. And I thought that was really sad that they can't accept themselves for what they are. The pressures on them because of these little pocket computers and everything is just dire. I think perhaps we should have some sort of, I don't know, what is it, meteor storm or something that will wipe all the chips, and then we'll start again. Because it's people say, oh, how will we survive? But going back to when I was growing up back in the day, you didn't have all these. You still had you could still get your telephones and everything else, so you can still contact each other. It's not as though we'd go back to the dark ages. We could still get electricity going, but just get rid of the little chips and things, and try and be normal humans. Otherwise, we'll end up like robots.
We really are. And the group that I feel bad for, I mean, the most is young women. Like young women, because social media are put through, like you were saying, the filters. I see them put so much filters on their pictures, like and like some of them I know them in person, and I'm like, that does not even look like you. That picture of you, that is not you. Why are you putting all these filters? And it's like it's almost like you got to look a certain kind of way now, and it's just and
it saddens me because as a woman of a certain age, as I say, I'll be 60 in about a week, you grow up and you've got this long life ahead of you, but society seems to value, especially the female, they seem to value only, say, about 10, 15 years of your life as being what is acceptable. And then the rest of that time, I mean, if you live up to be 100, you've still got such a long time to go, but your value with regard to how you appear is you become invisible or ignored because you're not what society wants to see. So women are continually, and they're awful to each other as well, they're continually trying to look younger, which isn't the same for men, or not always. I think that might be gradually changing. I mean, there has been more pressure on young men to look a certain way, to have a certain physique. That's coming over the past few years, but I think it's quite sad that your life is defined by that little block of time, as compared to the value that you can give a society over X, Y, Z number of years.
I was watching something and they were saying a woman's value is at this peak between, I think 18 to, I might be wrong, but it was 18 to 28, and that's not even a majority of a woman's life. Yeah,
it's feeling like you've got me on my soapbox here. but it's like you've been written off. It's okay, you've had that bit of time, now just go away and we'll forget about you. And they forget that those women, they might choose to have children, they might not, but that they're contributing to society with whether it's economically or whether it is providing the next generation. Their bodies have given society its worth and its continuity. And that is all disregarded. You're just dismissed, it's the, go away in your corner, hide those wrinkles, hide those grey hairs and everything. So I've made peace with myself long ago about what I'm like. I mean, if people don't like how I appear, well, tough, I'll get a haircut and I keep clean. but that's it. And I'm okay. I think you get that confidence as you get older to just accept yourself, warts and all. And, hope for the best. But I go out and I see they all look alike on the younger generation. They all look alike on social platforms. And then when you go out and you see gangs of young girls, they all look identical as well. Yes. And I'm thinking, hang on, you're going out with these fake eyelashes, this false tan and everything else. When you wake up in the morning, when you take it all off at night, or, you're going to be completely different. And if you're going out with someone and they see you with all this, what are they going to think? So then you've got women who never take these masks off in front of their partners because it would be too different. But yeah, a bit of a hobby horse of mine. Sorry.
No problem. But I'm going on a rant. But like Nicole Kidman, who's I think is a beautiful, great actress. Great person. I mean, she does a lot of charity work, and attractive woman. I mean, I'm going to say Nicole Kidman has to be in her 50s. But I saw something recently of her. And listen, we all age gracefully. We all get old. But I saw something recently. And she has had so much plastic surgery done on her face. It looks like she's pulled all the way back. And I'm like, why would she do that? Yeah, I guess society is fuels that.
Yeah, they're becoming, it's like you become a caricature of yourself, of what it is to be a human. Those sort of stretched faces, they're a bit like the sort of robots that are created, and they talk about AI, or I think we're becoming an image of AI in a way. We're all becoming the same, but they say artificial intelligence. I'm not sure that we're that intelligent anymore.
Yeah, we're not. All right, so Stephanie, getting back to your book. Now, when you were writing this book, did you already have an ending in mind, or was that something you had to work to?
I am a pantser. I never plan my stories. I write them, and I used to sort of hope that an ending would appear, but I've learned, I don't know how, but somewhere about 2/3 of the way through, an ending will come into my head, and so I can go towards that. I used to worry a little bit, but now I'll just write, whether it's a short story, a novella or a novel, and I'll write and wait for that ending to hit, and it always seems to do that. Now with the Barricade, I think most of my stories being dark, they aren't always hopeful at the end. I remember some years back, someone said, we're doing this horror anthology for charity, but it's got to have a hopeful ending. Why don't you write something? And I couldn't give it a happy ending. And so when I was writing this one, I was thinking, I thought, is it going to be doom and gloom? That I'm not sure that you would call it a happy ending. As I say, you'll have to read it to find out. But there is a hopeful element that came there. But that occurred as I was writing. As I say, I never know how it's going to end. I usually start off with a character in my head, and I'll see them and they'll be looking at something or talking to somebody, and then that's it. I just go with them. I'll know whether I'm going to do a gothic, so they might be on the streets of the East End of London, or it might be a folk horror, so they're in a village somewhere, or like this one, you're in a sort of apocalyptic scenario with all the buildings destroyed around you. But as soon as I see that person, or they've come to me, I just sort of sit behind their eyes, and they walk and they talk and they do things, and I'm just going along with them. It's just not planned. I do want to do a sort of thriller crime story at some point. People keep saying, you've got to plan it because you've got to know who did this and who did that.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, I can't do that. I can't. So I just have to try and, see where it takes me. I did when I first started writing. I think it was actually going to be a sort of crime story, and I planned it out and got all these little character bios and did all sorts. And then I started it, and it just didn't go to plan, and it felt terrible trying to wrangle everybody back to where I wanted them to go. So I thought, no, that when the characters come to you and they start doing their own thing, they've come alive, they're living their life, and you're just along there for the ride.
Now, have you ever gotten to the end of a book and been like, boy, this doesn't flow right, this ending doesn't seem right, and you just started chopping up pieces?
No. Sometimes I'll always carry on writing. Sometimes I might cut a bit out and put it in another document. So if I need it, I can bring it back. But I carry on to the end. And if it's changing, I keep going with those changes. And then I'll go back and tweak the earlier bits. Otherwise, I'd just be continually going back to the start. But I find that as the ending comes to me, it usually solves any issues of how the story is flowing. Because I think, oh, yeah, this happened because of that. And then I'll go back and change it and smooth it over. I've learnt when I do stories that if I'm going to change a chunk of text, I don't just delete it. I'll cut it out, put it in a document and label it, excerpts from. And then if I need to bring it back, then I will, which I did do there's a folk horror novel. It's the third in the series that I've written. There's the first two out. It's 5 Turns of the Wheel and Reborn, and this one is called Mother's Night, Rise of the Hair Witch. And as I was writing it, my mind kept jumping about and putting other bits in. And I thought, that was 2 chapters earlier. I'm going to have to cut out and get rid of. That's a big word count. So I put them in another document and carry on writing. And then it was, I can bring that back, that bit back here and put it back in there. So I do that a little bit. So it can be bit of a jigsaw puzzle, but it's also like if I'm writing a scene and I'm carrying on and then I'm thinking, oh, I'm not quite sure what's going to happen next, there'll be another scene in my head that might be a bit further down in the story, and I'll write that, and then later I'll go back and fill those gaps in. So people have a linear way of writing, and I'm not like that. I'll start off that way, and then I'm up there, down here, and it's really looping the loop. But somehow it seems to work for me. It's not a style that other people necessarily follow. They say writers should follow this plan. You should do these certain beats. There's all this jargon, and I don't get any. I just write the story. I think my best teacher are the books that I've been reading. Over the years I read from a very early age. I didn't start writing until I was about 50. So older women, when you get a bit more time, you can write, it's your time, pick a pen up or the keyboard and just have a go, because people think, oh, it's a young person's game. Not necessarily. A new writer can be an older writer, not necessarily a younger writer. So around 50, I started sending out short stories and getting accepted. But it's only a couple of years back. I think it's about 3 years now. I'm not sure. It's not too long ago that my first novels started coming out. So I've got 3 novels out, 2 novellas, this new one, The Barricade. I got another one maybe next year and another novella next year. So there's all sorts of going on. And I did a stupid challenge to myself as well, because I'm a hybrid author in a way. So I've got published by small presses, but a lot of writers get fed up with rejections, and I send short stories out, and I've got some coming out this year, but I also get a lot of rejections, and you can see your year ahead being a black hole. So what I decided to do this year was I'm going to write a novelette a month, which is about 10,000 words. I'm just doing it for the year because I don't think I can keep going. Put them out each month as ebooks so people can access them as individual stories. At the end of 6 months, an omnibus, then do the next 6 months and an omnibus. And I'm just finishing the one that's going to be put up for August. And I thought that would be a way. I've done the covers myself. I've formatted, and I've done all sorts of things. And I put it up there, and I thought, right, that's one way to do it. But it's I've got to keep going to the end of the year now. I've got 4 more to write. And I'm
That's a lot to go. That's a lot to go, Stephanie.
Yeah, so that's a mixture of folk. I think there might be a sci-fi-ish one in there, possibly. I'm not sure whether I've done that one yet. Gothic, There's all sorts. So it's a way of people reading my stories, getting work out there, whilst I'm waiting for other people to say whether my work is yes or no from them. So if you're not getting acceptances and you think your work is good, go ahead and self-publish. There's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly. Now, Stephanie, where can everyone find you and all of your work?
All my work. StephanieEllis.org. So www.stephanieellis.org. So that's my website. All my stuff is pretty much on there. There's also some free stories and a free novella to read. If anybody does do self-publishing or is looking at it, I've actually got a little tab there, and it lists all the things that I've come across over the years that I used to create my work. I'm a great believer, well, partly because I don't have any money, in finding everything that's free. So there's all the free desktop publishing software, free places to get your images, things like that. I've moved on a little bit since then. Nice. So I format in Affinity and I do some work for other people. But I've put all this information there so people can go and have a look and see how to create their own ebooks, or there's ebook management software that again is free. There is so much out there that people can use to create a reasonable product themselves without having to go to any expense until they have got that bit of money to spend on themselves. I don't make huge amounts. I earn more for any proofreading and formatting work I do than my stories. But one day, this is a long-term game plan.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so the money will trickle in, maybe when I'm retirement age. If not, you can say you make money when you're dead. So it's my offspring's inheritance.
Yes. Well, the link to her website is going to be down in the description box, as well as the link to pre-order the Barricade is going to be down in the description box. So please do that, and also look out for it in August. Now, would it be on Amazon, and where would they be able to find the Barricade?
I believe it will be all the places you can order books from. So yes to Amazon. When I check with Lycan Valley, who are the actual publishers, then I'm sure they'll be able to let me know, and I'll make sure that you've got the links there at the bottom.
Perfect. Everything will be down in the description.
Yeah.
Stephanie, it's been an absolute blast having you on.
Fun. I've loved it, but I hope I haven't waffled too much. I went off at a tangent because you got me on my soapbox about things. But yeah.
See, but this is what I like to do. I like to have conversations, not interviews. So, this was fun. This was a fun conversation.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. All right, everyone. Well, thank you for coming to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce, and that is Stephanie Ellis. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Bye.